Now is a panel that can examine this from every angle. With me for the hour, Carl Bernstein, the legendary investigative reporter who broke the Watergate story wide open along with Bob Woodward. He's now a CNN political analyst. Also with me, Kelly McBride, media ethicist and vice president for the Poynter Institute. David Zurawik, a media critic with the Baltimore Sun. Olivia Nuzzi, Washington correspondent for the New York Magazine. And Ben Ferguson, radio host of The Ben Ferguson Show and a CNN political commentator. We're having trouble with Ben's live shot, so he's on the phone with us. And the whole panel's here for the hour for this special edition. Carl, we have a lot to get to. We're going to address CNN's error this week, the resignation of 3 reporters. That is something that the president and his aides are now exploiting, trying to demean this entire network as fake and fraudulent news. I'd love to hear your reaction first, Carl, to this anti-CNN video from the president this morning.
First, it's not just anti-CNN, it's anti-freedom of the press, it's anti-freedom of speech. It is a definitive statement by the President of the United States. And it also goes to the question that many military leaders in this questions are asked questions raised by military leaders in this country now, by the intelligence community, by people in Congress about the stability of the President of the United States. This is an index of his state of mind visually. It's very disturbing. There's nothing lighthearted about it whatsoever. It is an incitement. It is definitive, as I say, in the way this president views a free press and its exercise under the First Amendment to the Constitution. And let me add one thing here about Hillary Clinton and our coverage of Hillary Clinton and her server that Donald Trump and his people thought at the time was an example of great news by the same news institutions that he is now calling fake news. When it suits him, it's great news. When it doesn't, it's fake news. And the nexus of fake news in America is the Trump White House.
I'm glad we have an hour because we're going to unpack everything you just said. I want to ask about one detail in the CNN statement. Olivia, you are a working reporter in Washington every day, so you see some of the hate mail, some of the threats that reporters get. Did you interpret CNN's statement saying this video encourages violence? Do you agree with that this video actually encourages violence?
Well, I don't know if that was certainly Donald Trump's intention, but it doesn't matter, right? What matters is what the effect is. And I think there's certainly a chance that someone could look at that tweet like they saw his statements during the campaign and say, oh, well, this is what the president wants us to do, and we have to be concerned about that. But I think, this has happened a number of times where it goes from Reddit to one of Donald Trump's aides and then to Donald Trump's Twitter account.
Can you tell us about that? For all viewers who don't know what Reddit is, tell us about that.
Well, I don't recommend it, but Reddit is, a message board where people can talk and post all sorts of things, and it's sort of very freewheeling. And Donald Trump is very popular on Reddit during the campaign. There were all sorts of different threads where he was popular on Reddit, and this happened repeatedly, where something might go from, say, InfoWars to Reddit, and then go to one of presumably Donald Trump's aides who talks to him, and then it went to Donald Trump's Twitter account. It's just not something we're used to seeing come from the President of the United States, but it is something that we've seen repeatedly throughout Donald Trump's young political career.
Right. Ben Ferguson, I mentioned he's on the phone with us, a conservative talk show host and CNN commentator. So Ben, I'm curious, for your perspective, do you have a message for the president about sharing a video like this?
Look, I think we got to put it in perspective. This has been going around on Twitter. I think when I saw it, I initially laughed at it because I thought it was actually one of the more humorous moments of the real fighting back and forth that the president has had with the media. I don't think it incites violence. I think people are stretching when they imply that. Wrestling is fake. Everybody knows that wrestling is fake. This was something that you just need to have just an ounce of humor and just kind of look at this and say, this may actually be a little bit of a funny moment for this.
You could look at it and say it's clever. You can say wrestling's fake. Security threats are real. And Ben, you suffer from this just like the rest of us do. You get hate mail that sometimes threatens your life. And that's what's happening to folks at CNN right now. I've seen some of the trash that's coming to people's inboxes. How can we look at this video and not think that it's actually causing even more of those threats, more of that hate to fester out there?
Look, I think you obviously have reached a intense moment between the president and the media, where he feels like there are people out there in the media that their entire day is surrounded by trying to go after the president and turning stories into bigger news than it maybe really is. And that's one of the things that we saw this last week that he's trying to capitalize on. He's trying to make it abundantly clear that there are people in the media who have made it their personal mission and their job to destroy this president. And when you look at something like that he just tweeted out, and we try to turn this into a bigger story as if he's inciting violence, which is just not the reality.
Who's turning it into a bigger story, Ben? This is what the President of the United States decided to post today. He could have posted about health care. He could have responded to citizens' concerns about ISIS.
That you're playing into the exact point that I'm making here. And the point that I'm making is I think everyone's trying to make this into too big of a deal, over-exaggerate this. It took me 3 seconds to retweet that tweet earlier saying we were going to talk about this morning. I'm sure the president saw it and thought it was pretty funny and said, I'm going to retweet this. It took him 7 seconds. It didn't take him 72 hours or 24 hours or 12
No, I agree
hours.
with you on that. I agree. He's a busy man. He's got a lot to do. He's not just tweeting all day. But what he does for 7 seconds can hurt people. And let me go to David Zurawik on this. The president's acting strong. I think that's what his supporters on Reddit are saying right now. This is a show of strength. I would argue it's an admission of weakness, that campaigning against the media is sort of all he has. It's his fuel to keep fans on his side. Zurawik, your reaction?
Well, look, first, I want to say I couldn't disagree more with Ben. And I think the most dangerous thing is to say, oh, have a sense of humor, let's just laugh at it. You can kill somebody in 7 seconds. That's part of the problem with social media, is people don't think about what they say, and they put out hateful, nasty stuff like this. Listen, I wrote this week. I really believe this. Twitter was a great tool for somebody outside of the power, somebody campaigning. It's great for people who are protesting, people outside the castle. It's a great attack vehicle. But now that he's inside the castle and he's the guy running it, he doesn't know how to control that voice anymore. It's like the gods gave him the gift of fire to vanquish all his opponents in the Republican primary. It was a 24/7 kind of attack ad that cost you nothing. It'll revolutionize campaigning, I'm sure. But now what it's giving us is exactly what you said at the top. It's giving us a glimpse into his mind with these tweets like the ones against Mika Brzezinski and this. And it's a really disturbing look at the man running the country. Look, you take somebody, you slam them physically to the ground, you put a logo on identifying them. That's what fascists did in the 30s to people. This is not something, Ben, that you laugh about and say, oh, ho, ho, it's only 7 seconds. What a funny thing. Get a sense of humor. Yuck it up. It's
now, David,
not.
You're not saying we're anywhere near fascism, are you?
This is David. With all due respect, as a media critic, have you ever had this type of intensity towards people? Great example, Saturday Night Live. Or would you say that that's humor and funny?
Listen, I denounced Barack Obama when he tried to cut Fox from the herd and say, I'm going to define what a legitimate news organization is. Ask Brian. I was on this show with the same intensity. This is about what Carl Bernstein's talking about. This is about our constitutional government. It's about the high end of the press, which Trump doesn't understand. He knows the bottom feeders in the tabloid world. That's the kind of people he knows, people who can be bought and sold, people who can be scared. If he thinks the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN is going to be scared by him, he is in for the rudest awakening of his life.
Let's be clear about this. What you're saying is that anyone else out there that wants to be funny, Saturday Night Live, comedians, people that mock him on TV, that is acceptable. But for the president to have a little bit of a sense of humor this morning and to actually put out a video that he was in with fake wrestling, you're now saying is fascism.
No, not true, Ben. Ben, when Kathy Griffin did something physical that would possibly incite violence against the president, we all denounced her. This is a good point.
There was widespread condemnation of the Kathy Griffin photo.
1 second.
Carl, go ahead.
Excuse me. I want to interject here. This is about the President of the United States rejecting what reporters do, which is to report and try to get the best obtainable version of the truth. It is that function that has terrified this president from the beginning. It is that function that has turned him into this kind of bully, as other people have noted. He is going to the question of what we do at the heart of our business, which is to report. He does not want us to report. He wants us to be lapdogs. He wants us to be, as he had early in his campaign, very pliant toward what he is saying and toward his sensationalism and toward his manufactured controversy instead of the best obtainable version of the truth. That's what all of this is about, and we need to return to our reporting.
With all due respect,
can I finish, please? Can I just finish?
We have to be intellectually honest here and look at the reality that there is a significant percentage of the media, especially in Washington, D.C., that have a genuine disdain and hatred for the President of the United States of America. And what you're saying is that the President does not expect them to be his lapdog. He just is asking for them to at least be fair in their coverage. And there are a lot of people in the media that are not. They go out there with the intent to do everything they can to undermine and take down this White House.
All right, Ben,
let me just say one thing
break,
here
but I'm going to blow through the break. Let me add this thing, and let me get Kelly McBride in here. We're talking about the media very broadly. It includes reporters, and it also includes commentators. And I think there's a lot of commentators who are very disturbed by the president, some of whom may go overboard sometimes. But I think, Carl, your point is on the reporting front, we need to continue to do the reporting jobs. Yes, commentators might go overboard. Kelly, I really want to hear from you. Kelly McBride, the Poynter Institute. How do you think journalists should be covering this kind of anti-CNN tweet, if at all?
Well, I honestly think that we're probably spending a little too much time on it here.
Okay.
No offense.
That's okay. That's why I asked.
And frankly, it just came out, and so this is like in the last 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and so it's not completely inappropriate. But I mean, yes, if a reporter did this, a reporter would be fired. Right? And so I don't think we have to debate whether it's appropriate or what the president's state of mind was, whether he was trying to make a joke or whether he's trying to be intentional. I think what we have to do as journalists is focus on the stories that need our attention. What's going on with the Health Care Act? What's going on with our taxes? What's going on with trade? What's going on with climate change? And how are federal policies that the president is enacting or not enacting affecting those issues? And I worry that when we get, I'm completely offended by this clip. And I also think it's kind of ironic because I believe that this clip, or one very similar to it, is part of the documentary that just came out last week called Nobody Speak, which is about the threat to the free press.
Great Netflix doc,
that many forces. Yeah. And so I think that there's a certain amount of irony here, but when we get distracted by this and we get too emotional and we take our eye off our job, then we're not serving our audience either. And so,
but isn't part of our
really
job to explain why we do what we do? And these kinds of messages have a corrosive effect on a big portion of the country.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we can do that. We can do that in a way that we can be heard now. And I worry that the way you guys are yelling at each other, nobody's listening to you.
Then let's make sure we don't speak over each other. Let's get Ben's video up. We're trying to get Ben on camera. We're going to keep everybody around here, take a break and reset, because there's a lot more to discuss, including CNN's retraction and resignations of 3 staffers. Is the press giving the president ammunition for his war? We're also going to discuss Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, and the National Enquirer.